What would you do if you discovered that your mother-in-law wasn't just trying to break up your marriage, but was actually trying to poison you? This Reddit story starts with typical mother-in-law drama, but quickly escalates into a nightmare involving attempted murder, family conspiracies, and a revenge plot so satisfying that it's become legendary. By the end of this story, you'll see how one woman's fight for survival exposed a family secret that destroyed everything. If you think your mother-in-law is bad, wait until you hear this story. Hit that like button because this tale of survival and revenge will leave you speechless. Meet Rachel, a 28-year-old graphic designer who married her college sweetheart Mike after dating for 6 years. Everything was perfect except for one problem: Mike's mother, Patricia, who had made it clear from day one that no woman would ever be good enough for her precious son. For the first year of marriage, Patricia's interference was typical mother-in-law stuff, criticizing Rachel's cooking, rearranging their furniture when she visited, and constantly suggesting that Mike deserved someone more accomplished. Rachel tried to keep the peace for Mike's sake, even though Patricia's behavior was getting progressively worse. The real problem started when Rachel and Mike announced they were trying to have a baby. Patricia's reaction was immediate and terrifying. She told Mike that Rachel would ruin the family bloodline and that he needed to reconsider his choices before it was too late. That reaction should have been a massive red flag, but nobody could have predicted how far Patricia was willing to go. Subscribe now because this story takes the darkest turn imaginable. After the baby announcement, Patricia started visiting their house almost daily, always bringing food that she insisted Rachel needed to eat to prepare her body for motherhood. Rachel noticed the food always tasted slightly off, but she attributed it to Patricia's heavy-handed use of spices and herbs. Then Rachel started getting sick. Really sick. She was constantly nauseous, having severe stomach cramps, and experiencing dizziness that was way beyond normal pregnancy symptoms. Multiple doctors told her it was just severe morning sickness and prescribed rest and bland foods. But Rachel noticed something disturbing: she only felt sick after eating Patricia's food. When Mike was out of town for work and Patricia didn't visit, Rachel felt fine. When Patricia came over with her special meals, Rachel would be violently ill within hours. The breaking point came when Rachel collapsed at work and had to be rushed to the hospital. The doctors were baffled by her symptoms and started running extensive tests to figure out what was wrong. The test results were about to reveal something so horrifying that it would change Rachel's life forever. You won't believe what Patricia had been doing. The blood tests revealed something that made Rachel's doctor immediately call the police. Rachel had been systematically poisoned with small doses of arsenic over several months. The levels were high enough to cause serious illness but low enough to be mistaken for pregnancy complications. Rachel was devastated, but she was also confused. Who would poison a pregnant woman? Then she remembered Patricia's insistence that she eat the special meals, and everything clicked into place. But Rachel needed proof before she could accuse her mother-in-law of attempted murder. Rachel convinced Mike that she was feeling better and wanted to have Patricia over for dinner to rebuild their relationship. During the visit, Rachel secretly recorded Patricia preparing food in their kitchen, and she saved samples of everything Patricia brought or made. When Rachel had the food tested at a private lab, every single dish Patricia had prepared contained arsenic. But the most chilling discovery was that Patricia had been gradually increasing the dosage, as if she was building up to something final. Rachel realized she wasn't just dealing with a difficult mother-in-law, she was dealing with someone who was literally trying to kill her. Hit that notification bell because her investigation uncovered secrets that destroyed an entire family. Rachel went to the police with her evidence, but the investigation revealed something even more disturbing. Patricia had been researching arsenic poisoning for months, and her internet search history showed queries like how much arsenic is fatal and symptoms of arsenic poisoning in pregnancy. But the most shocking discovery came when police searched Patricia's house. They found a journal where Patricia had been documenting her poisoning plan, including notes about dosages, Rachel's reactions, and her ultimate goal: to make Rachel's death look like pregnancy complications. The journal entries were absolutely chilling. Patricia wrote about how she couldn't let that girl contaminate the family line and how Mike would thank her later for saving him from making the biggest mistake of his life. She had convinced herself that murdering Rachel was an act of love for her son. But Patricia hadn't been working alone. The investigation revealed that Mike's sister Karen had been helping her research poisons and had even provided some of the arsenic from her job at a pest control company. This wasn't just one crazy mother-in-law, it was a family conspiracy to commit murder. Subscribe if you want to see how Rachel got her justice. The most heartbreaking part of the investigation was Mike's reaction. When confronted with evidence that his mother and sister had tried to murder his wife, Mike initially refused to believe it. He accused Rachel of trying to destroy his family and suggested she was making everything up for attention. Even when shown the journal entries, the poisoned food samples, and the medical records, Mike stood by his mother. He claimed Patricia would never hurt anyone and that there must be another explanation. The betrayal of her husband choosing his attempted murderer mother over his nearly murdered wife was almost worse than the poisoning itself. Rachel realized she wasn't just fighting for justice, she was fighting for her life. If Mike wouldn't protect her from his family, then she would have to protect herself. And Rachel's plan for protection turned into the most devastating revenge imaginable. Rachel didn't just want Patricia and Karen arrested, she wanted to expose them so thoroughly that they could never hurt anyone else, and she wanted Mike to fully understand what his loyalty to his family had cost him. Rachel's revenge plan was so perfectly calculated that it didn't just destroy Patricia and Karen, it exposed every dirty secret this toxic family had been hiding. Comment below, how would you have handled a husband who chose his family over your safety? Rachel's masterstroke was realizing that Patricia's poisoning attempts weren't her first crimes, they were just her most recent ones. Rachel hired a private investigator to look into Patricia's history, and what they found was terrifying. Patricia's first husband, Mike's father, had died of mysterious illness 20 years earlier. The symptoms described in his medical records were consistent with arsenic poisoning, but arsenic testing wasn't routine in those days. Patricia had collected life insurance money and immediately started dating again. Even more disturbing, Patricia had worked as a home health aide for elderly patients, and an unusual number of her clients had died unexpectedly. When Rachel brought this information to police, they opened investigations into multiple suspicious deaths spanning decades. Rachel also discovered that Karen had been embezzling money from her pest control job to fund Patricia's lifestyle, using the same chemicals Patricia was using to poison Rachel. The media picked up the story when Patricia and Karen were arrested, and it became a national sensation. The headlines read "Mother-in-law poison plot" and "Family murder conspiracy exposed." The way this story exploded into national news completely destroyed Patricia's reputation and exposed her to everyone she'd ever hurt. Hit that like button if you think she deserved all the public shame. Patricia was sentenced to life in prison without parole for attempted murder and multiple counts of suspected homicide. Karen received 15 years for conspiracy and embezzlement. The investigation into Patricia's previous victims led to several cold cases being reopened and reclassified as homicides. Mike finally realized the truth when Patricia's journal entries were read aloud in court, but by then it was too late. Rachel had filed for divorce and moved across the country to start over. Mike begged for forgiveness, but Rachel knew she could never trust someone who had chosen his murderous mother over his wife's life. Rachel's baby was born healthy, and she raised him as a single mother with help from her own family, who had supported her throughout the ordeal. She started a blog about surviving family toxicity and recognizing the signs of poisoning, which has helped other women identify similar abuse. The most satisfying part? Patricia's life sentence means she'll die in prison, exactly the fate she had planned for Rachel. And Mike lost everything: his wife, his child, his mother, his sister, and his reputation in their community. Sometimes the people who claim to love us are the ones most willing to destroy us. If this story of survival and justice inspired you, make sure you're subscribed for more incredible stories. This story teaches us something terrifying about family dynamics and loyalty. Patricia was so consumed with controlling her son's life that she was willing to commit murder to maintain that control. And Mike was so brainwashed by his toxic family that he nearly chose his attempted murderer mother over his innocent wife. But what makes Rachel's story so powerful is that she didn't just survive, she fought back intelligently. She gathered evidence, built a case, and exposed not just her own abuse but decades of other crimes. Her courage to investigate and prosecute probably saved other people's lives. The saddest part isn't that Patricia was evil, it's that Mike was so conditioned to enable his mother's behavior that he couldn't see attempted murder for what it was. Rachel lost her husband, but she gained something more valuable, the knowledge that she was strong enough to save herself when no one else would. If this story of survival, investigation, and justice against family abuse moved you, I need you to smash that like button, subscribe and hit the bell for more stories of people who refuse to be victims, and share this with anyone who needs to hear that they can survive toxic family situations. Comment below and tell me, have you ever had to cut off toxic family members to protect yourself? Let's support each other and break the cycles of family abuse together. Your story matters, and you deserve to be safe. See you in the next incredible survival story.